So guys, if you remember the project flow that we discussed, what we have first, we have the index.html. Okay. This index.html calls the component.js. This in turn calls your manifest.json. The manifest.json is connected to your view. So what we are seeing till now is that we have one view, and this is the structure. Right? Let me just create the course. Alright, and the view in turn is connected to the manifest. Right, this is what we have seen, and this is what we have used in our projects. Right, guys? So this view typically has, what our view has, it has a app control, it has a page control, and within the page control I have my various intended controls. Okay. So this is what my structure looks like as of now. Now let's look at another scenario. So let's look at a scenario structure for one view. Now let's take an example where we have two views. So we have view 1, view 1, and we have view 2. Okay, let me just put it over here. Obviously view 2 will also have an app control, it will have pages, it will have the intended controls. Right. Now the linking will be this way. Right. Any questions so far, guys? Alright, so this is fine, this is what we understand, but here we have a challenge in this kind of architecture. What is the challenge? We cannot pass information and we cannot navigate. So we cannot navigate from one container to another container. So if we have one navigational container, and this is obviously going to be another, both will have different IDs, right? So they are two separate containers. Now my controls cannot interact with the controls of another navigator, another navigation control. So in short, there is no communication that can happen between view 1 and view 2. And as you recall, the purpose of having multiple views in any project is so that we can show more details, we can follow a logical path. So suppose for example I have a list in the first page, and I click on any item. In the second page I want to show its details, right? For that to happen, I need to have some communication happening between the elements of my first view and my second view. And the challenge that I'm talking about is because both of these controls are there in separate navigation containers, what is going to happen? There is going to be no communication. We cannot do that. The framework does not allow us to do this. Okay. So that is the challenge that we face. So this is our issue. So what to do? So SAP UI5 framework provided us with another concept. What they did, they told us that, boss, what you do, we create a dummy view, right? And in this dummy view, you only have we have one control, which is the app control. So it will not have pages and it will not have intended controls. It will only have app controls. Right? And what I'll do, I will connect or mark this view as my root view to the manifest.json. I will mark this view as my dummy view to manifest.json. And at runtime, based on various logics, I will be adding, so I will make one more change over here. I will be adding my views. So now what we do, in each view, we now remove the app container. We do not create or instantiate a new container. Instead what we do, we just have pages and we have the intended controls. That's it. We don't have a separate nav container or separate app container for these views. This is so now what happens at runtime, based on some logic, I will assign these views or assign these page controls to the app. So as we said, app view or app control can have multiple pages assigned to it, and it only shows the latest page assigned to it at the screen. So at a time, app control will only show one page. So if I say assign view 1 and then after some action I assign view 2, so view 2 becomes the latest page, and that is what I'll see on my screen, right? And this concept is known as routing. As I mentioned, the logic will be, so basically the logic will be, or the example, so how these views will be added into the app control. So there will be some event. There will be an event. So everything is event based. On an event, we define the view to be added, and we define to which aggregation it needs to be added. And so which aggregation of which control it needs to be added. Okay? This is the logic. So let's take an example. So what might be my routing? So basically this information is what we maintain in a routing. Okay? Routing logic is this. So let's take some example of routing logics. So first example is that, as I mentioned, this dummy view, which I have named app view, is blank by default. It only has the app container. So I want at runtime the first view to be loaded as view 1. So what kind of logic will I write in my routing? What I will do, I will create a connection and I will write when the application is loaded, right? So this becomes my event, right? When the application is loaded, this becomes your event. Add view 1. So this is your view which needs to be added. Add view 1, right? Pages aggregation of app control in app view. So the first thing is event. So the event over here is when the application is loaded. What you need to do, you need to add a view. So which view? View 1. Which aggregation it needs to be added to? Pages aggregation. Right? So we remember app view controls. App controls basically add the views. So let's take a look at our latest project 7, and if I open the view now, so you will see the app control adds the page in which aggregation, pages aggregation. That is what we maintain in pages aggregation of which control. So we give the ID of the control, app control, app control. In which view? In the app view. Right? So these are your 5 components. I need to add one more over. Alright, let's take another example. So I have loaded my view 1. Okay, everything is fine, and now I have say a button. Based on when I click on that, a new page opens. Right. So now what will be my routing logic for view 2? So my routing logic for view 2 would be when button is clicked or when button is pressed. Add view 2 pages aggregation of app control in app. Right. And what happens? Once all of this logic is clear, the view 2 gets loaded into the app. And because this is the latest view now, so view 1 will not be displayed. Although it is there in the HTML code, it is now not going to be displayed, and view 2 is what is going to be displayed in the app view. So this is how routing logic works. And what happens when I click on back? So if I do a browser back button, or if I have a back button in my screen, what happens then? So again, we write a logic. So suppose over here itself we have a back button in view 2. So what will be the logic? When the button is pressed or when back button is pressed, add view 1 in pages aggregation of app control in app view. Again the same. But this time the view 1 will not be rendered. So as we discussed earlier, controls do not, once they have been rendered, then they do not get rendered again. It will, what will happen? The view 2 will be set as invisible and view 1 will become visible. That's it. Right. So navigation between pages is possible in this way. Right? You can navigate from one view to another, and so on and so forth, say to 10 views. And if from 10th view you want to create a route which creates say opens view 5, then you can do that, and immediately view 5 gets opened on the app or displayed on the app. Okay. So this is how the routing logic do this practically in WebID. Right. So let me just close up all of these, and what do I do? I'll create a new project. So this will be project 8. So new project template, and this will be same UI5 application. Right. And this time I'll do one change. So till now I've just given a random name, right? So view 1 is auto generated and that is what I give. But the normal convention in UI5 coding is that your starting view or your dummy view should have the same name as your navigation container. So my navigation container is, in this scenario, app. So my view name is app. Okay. This is just a way to identify. So if somebody who is very new to the project gets this package and they need to modify it, they immediately know that this is my starting point. So without debugging, they will know okay, this is my starting point just by looking at the view structure, and then they can open the various files and see from a dry run logic kind of view what is going to happen when. Right. So I just named my view as view 1. So instead of view 1, I've just named it as app view. Right. And that is it. Now let's see what files get generated. And because we have not done anything different, so we will have the same applications. Only difference will be that instead of view 1 you will see app, right? Let's see guys. So project gate, and you can see the view is now app.view.xml, and the controller also becomes app.controller.js. Okay. And in the manifest you can see in the code editor your root view is app. So far what we've done, so if I run it right now, what will happen? I will just see a blank screen. Why? Because nothing is added, no controls have been. Sorry, wait. I have to do one change. So, keeping in mind whatever I have just talked about, I will remove this. Right? We don't want this. You only have the app control. Now let's run. Let's see what happens. So why I removed pages? Because otherwise you would have seen a title. And that is not going to be there in a proper project because we are not going to add any controls to the app control. So as you can see, it is just a blank screen. Right? You see some space because I have left the shell just to show you the border of the application control. So right, the application control is this middle area. Right? So because we have not added anything and we have not added any control, it is just going to be a grayed out container area, nothing else. Right? Now let's do something. Let's create a view. Right? So far we have not had a chance to create a separate view. So the view gets automatically created by the wizard. So what we do, we create a view. Right? And let's see how we do that. So you go to the view folder, right click on it, new, and then you say SAP UI5. Right? So what is the process? To your project, go to the view folder. In the view folder, go to new and click on SAP UI5. So by default, it will open in this template, and here you can give the view. So again, now we are going into practice of what we are actually going to do in a project. So till now what we are doing is just understanding the various concepts. Now we will try to follow the same conventions as we would follow in a actual productive project, right? So let's first understand what is the use of this view. So I want this view to show a list of sales orders, right? So if you remember guys, I discussed this yesterday with you, where I said that we will now be using different entity sets. So I showed some entity sets to you, right? And I said, okay, we'll use product today, and tomorrow we'll use sales order, right? So we'll use sales order now. Okay. Let's just take a look at it. So basically, my view one is going to list all the sales order, right? So what I'll do, in my web ID, I will now name this view as sales order, because that is the purpose of my view. It is going to display sales order, right? So view names are always given. The convention is, so there's not going to be any error, but this is the convention. So the first letter of each word is caps, is in uppercase, right? And typically with the name that we give to the view is associated with what is going to be displayed, what object is going to be displayed in that. So this is sales order, right? Then we click on. So what I have done, I have created the view, but I have not created a route. So what is happening? By default, only the root view gets loaded. Nothing else is being done. No route has been created, so nothing is going to be done. Okay. So now let's come to the routing part. So now let's actually check what is routing and how we do this. So let's go to the routing, and here you will see some important elements that we need to maintain. Okay. So first of all, what we need to check is your view path. So basically this defines from where the control to the manifest will be picking up views. So you've defined that all of your views are in this namespace, this project dot view right? Then we have defined the view type. So you defined that the view is XML. Next, we define the control of your app. The control of your navigation container. So in this scenario, the control ID is app, right? So this is by default automatically updated. Next important thing is control aggregation. So basically what we're telling is we are not going to explicitly write the aggregation name in a routing. So by default, all the routing will happen on, or all the aggregation of all the views will happen on the pages aggregation. So by default, in this app ID control of app control, pages aggregation, which is what I've maintained over here, will be used for doing the aggregation or doing the routing, this basic configuration. So this we have to always maintain. And now actually let's come to the routing part. So what will be my routing logic? So in this scenario, the routing logic will be when the application loads, on load of application, sales order view should be added to the pages aggregation of app control in the app, right? So we have already defined part of it here, pages aggregation of app control in the app, right? Where we have defined the app view, we have defined the app view in the root that we just saw, right? The root. So this part is done. Now we are going to do the first part, which is the event and the view, right? So that we do over here. So there is some root already maintained, so we'll remove it. We don't want this. And let's just remove these as well. We don't want this. And okay, now let's create a root. So important thing, we have to give a name to it. So it is a free text, write anything. So we will give the name as initial, right? This is the initial root. That's why I've just given the name as initial. So this is the identifier based on which I will be calling the various routes. So cases and what we have written is very important. Next, the pattern. So for now, let's just leave it as blank. We'll discuss it when we move further in our project. Target title. So basically, target title is again something which is a free text, and this is sort of like a description. So in our scenario, we'll just simply write basic description, initial view, right? And so these are the targets. So targets are basically all the views that we have created are automatically updated over. So you can see what are the details maintained here. You have the view name, you have some title if you want to give it to, and the view ID, right? And view level, control aggregations, and all these things. So right now we don't need any of these. So I simply need to add this into the route. So what I do, I click on the plus, it will search for all the targets available, and that's it. So what I have done, so when I save all this, what I have done, I have created an initial route, name with the name initial, and pattern is empty, right? And I have assigned a view over. So what I've done, on the screen load, on the application load, which is denoted by a blank pattern. So now we'll see the importance of patterns. Basically, pattern is always unique. So each route will have a unique pattern. So when we say a blank pattern, what this shows that this will be triggered at the application load. So on the application load, we are loading sales order view, where we are loading it in the pages aggregation of the app control, right? Guys, is this mapping clear? Any questions so far? Guys, any questions on this? Alright, so what we have done, we have done this routing or created this routing map over here, and let's actually see what is generated by the code editor. So if you see, you will have over here routing, right? And this is the configuration that we have done, which is at the top, right? The class, view type, view path, control aggregation, control ID, right? And then what we are doing? Okay, so this is something that happens. So sometimes from the descriptor editor to the code editor, things do not flow properly, and that is why it's always a good practice to check it. So you can see I maintained initial over here, but here the name is route. So I just change it back here, initial. So this is in line with this. So name is initial, pattern is empty, DD is unchecked, false, title target is what I have maintained it, and target is sales order. Now let's take a look at target. Target is sales order, view name I have given sales order, and view type is Excel. Okay. So all my mapping is done. So ideally now my application should load. So let's see. Let me open the network tab as well. Sorry. And let me show you what is done. Alright, so guys, you can see now the details are loaded, right? You can see the various sales order have been loaded, and if we check the network tab, we can actually see the sequence also. So you can see that first your component.js gets loaded, right? Then from your manifest, your app.view gets loaded. The app.view in turn calls your sales order.view, right? Because this is what we have maintained in the routing logic of manifest. And then your controllers get called accordingly. App controller and sales. And then because in the sales order we have aggregated using the GW sample underscore basic auditor service, a batch call is made, and this batch call basically fetches the data. So this we have seen already yesterday. A count request will be sent, count, and then top 10, because that is what I've maintained as my threshold. So top 10 elements are displayed. Right? So this is how we do the routing. And what we'll do now is, so we have a list of items that we can see over here. So next requirement will be, so I want to, on selection of any element, I want to show the details of whatever we of this line item or the sales order. The details I want to see in a separate view. So my this view should get removed and a new view should be displayed. Right, this is my requirement. So we'll see how to do that. So I will take a short break, and at 11:15. Right, so right now it's 11:11. At 11:15 we'll reconvene, and then we'll see how to do this. Right? To make this clickable, right? So I will make it clickable by adding the type as active. A function to this, press item, press. Now this is clickable. Next is to create a view. So we'll create another new SAP UI5 view. And this time I'll give the name as sales order details. Right? Because that is what I'm going to show. So next. Alright, sales order details. Now if I open this view, again app and pages will need it. And then the page tagging, let me just add so for now in the content, let's just have single text element. text. Because right now what I'm doing is I just want to see if the navigation from sales order view to sales order detail can be done and how to do it, right? So let's go to the manifesto. Let's go back to the restricted editor, okay, and let's create a next route. Right. So what we'll do, I'll click on the plus sign, okay, and I'll give some names. So I will give sales order this time we'll just simply create a pattern. So suppose I want to create a pattern as sales of the setting, and I want to show the sales order details. That's it. Now if I check the code editor to double confirm if everything is fine, so again you can see that the route name is not picked up, so I'll just copy it back from here. Here. Pattern is sales order. Why? Because pattern is unique for each row. So I've just picked a random pattern, target, and then the target is sales order details, right? So I've done the routing. So now if I refresh this application and I click on this item, will the view go to the next view? Let's check. So I have the page, I have a list, and it is clickable. So if I click on it, nothing happens. Why is that, guys? Why are we not routing, or why we are not going to the next row, next view? If you check, for the routing logic to be completed, we have given the view to be added, we have given the aggregation, we have given the control, and we have given which view it needs to be added into, but we have missed out the first part, the event. So as we mentioned, all routing is event based, right? So the event is one click of a button. That's fine, we have defined that list as clickable and given a function, but we have not defined anything in the function, right? So I now need to define something in this function, and let's see what we define. So this is all auto generated and I can just move it, not recorded. Right. Keep on here. Let's remove the rest of the things. Let's create a function. So on list item press, right? Basic function, right? But now we need to look into the syntax of how we trigger a route, right? And to do that, what we need to do is we need to go into the router API. So let's go to the router API. So we go to this router, sap.ui.code.routing.router, right? So this instantiates a UI5 router, and this is the way it needs to be done. So what are the various details? We can pass the route information, right? Then we can pass the configurations. So these are all the details that you need to maintain, right? So let's look at, so basically what we've done, we have a router, and so this gets instantiated, and where we can see this, so if you go to the component.js, the instantiation of the router is already done. This.getRouter.initialize, right? So it instantiates your router automatically in the component using managers. Okay. You can see sap.m.routing router is what they have used. Okay, it is extending this, so we can use anything, right? These are the details, but what I'm most interested is its methods. So there's a method over here which is actually coming from this sap.ui.core routing router, which is nav2. Coming from sap.ui.core.routing router, which is why I took you first over here. Let's take a look at it. Okay. So what this does, this makes you navigate, or this triggers the routing from one view to another. So nav2 gives the name of your route, and then you pass certain parameters, right? And that's so let's use this. So what we'll do, we'll go to the SAP use not needed, we'll close it. Sales order, I got the control. So what I need to do, I need to first get the reference of the router so that I can use the function. So what I'll do, I'll create a variable o router, right? And I will not write new. Why? Because it is already initialized. So instead, what I will do, sap.ui.core.ui component. So basically, what I'm doing, I'm referencing to the component.js. Right? Dot get router just quickly take a look at this as well. So we already have the nav2. This time I'll take you to UI. So this is the class, right? sap.ui.core.ui component. And if you check the methods, we will have the method that we are referencing over here, get router for. Okay. So the list. Check. Okay. So this is the method get router. And then we just pass this, right? So let me check this, because this is what I've used earlier as well. So let me first use this. But so basically what we've done is we've fetched the reference of the router, and now using the method that we checked earlier, which is nav2, so using this method nav2, I will navigate to the second screen, right? So how do we do that? O router dot nav2 will pass the name of the route to trigger, which is mentioned over here in the let's quickly do a debugger and let's see what happens. Okay, so far so good. Now when I click on any item, control goes over here, right, and comes here, right, and I get the reference of the route. and then I simply need to navigate to this second view, and you can see I can get the details over here, right? Basic text is what I did, and the page name was sales order details, so I show sales order details. So guys, is this navigation clear? How I have done the navigation? So basically, you just need to remember this, these two lines of code. So whenever you want to trigger anything, right, you will trigger the navigation or routing through this. No, it will contain the instance of this router. So it is wrong to say it will contain all the routes. What it will do is it will contain the instance of this router, and this router in turn in the structure might contain all these details. So let's take a quick look at it. So I will if I'll have to. So okay, one more thing I want to show over here. So, sales order, this is maintained because I maintained that as a pattern. So Ranjan, I'm coming back to your question, but just in a moment. So this pattern I've maintained as sales order, right? And you can see that it has been appended into the UI. So if I just refresh this application, it will always take me to the this page, because the navigation gets triggered from the URL, which we know as bookmark. So whenever I want to refresh an application, I should remove at the end of it whatever I've maintained, the the slashes, because those do not denote that the routing has already been done, and this takes me to the first view. Right now you can see there are no slashes, and this takes me to the first view. So let me open the console, and now Ranjan, I'll get back to your question. So I've clicked on this. Have I removed the debugger? So do this, and in the source, so I'm looking for sales order, and I'll add a breakpoint. So when I click on something, so router has been fetched. Now let's see what all details we have in the router. Clear all of this. So what it has all the details of this class, and it has your targets, right? Whichever targets you defined already, it has those targets over here, which we can see over here. Sales order details. It will have your views. It will also have your tools. So this is what you were wanting to know, right? You can see batch 1 project 8, and it has taken me, see, it has directly taken me to the second screen. Why? Because of the pattern. So when the application is loading, this pattern gets matched, and because this pattern is matching, it will automatically trigger the routing. So very good for bookmarking. So routing concepts, if are clear, then bookmarking is very easy. Suppose if we'll cover how it is helpful to us a little later on, right? Alright. So I was expecting one question, which is quite like common requirement in a development perspectives. So talk about any development that you do. If you're navigating or using more than one function, you need to pass some parameters, right? So all of you might have done that in your various projects. If you're navigating or moving from one object to another object, you need to pass some variables. You need to pass some data so that there is some common reference, right? And so how do we pass those references? So how do I tell this view that I have selected this particular element? So like I've selected this element. So how do I tell my view I've selected this element? How do I pass these parameters, right? That would be the next question to understand. So I was expecting this. So basically, routing has provided us with an option for this also. So when we create routes, we need to explicitly define the parameters that we need to pass. Right? So for example, what I want to do is I want to, as I mentioned, I want to show the details of the sales order which I have selected over here. Right? So how to do that? So obviously I will need to pass the sales order ID because that is the key, right? So if you check the metadata and you can see that sales order ID is the key, right? So I need to pass this key to the second view, so that it is, I can then use it to display the various details. So we need to now understand how to pass parameters. So now parameters in URL can be of two types, either mandatory parameters or optional parameters, right? So for now we'll just look at mandatory parameters. So what I need to do is, while defining my parameter, the route pattern, I need to add some details. So I need to do something like this. Yes, right. So if what I'm telling this pattern, that when this route is triggered, the pattern will be sales order and then some key, right? Okay guys, so what I'm telling them, that this is what the pattern will be like: sales order slash and then the SID. So I can pass anything in the SID and that I will define in my control. So let me save it and let's see if it is reflecting in the code editor. So it is not, so let me just copy it from here as well and change it in. Okay, so it is reflecting sales order SID, right? So looks fine. So now what we'll do, let's see what is the change to our syntax. So first of all, obviously I need to get the ID of my object. What does get source contain? Get source contains the source or the object from where you have fetched the details, right? Are you with me so far? So basically, oEvent.getSource will get us the control which was clicked. Is that correct? Right. So we already have this control. Now I want to access one single element out of this control, right? So let's check where this sales order ID is maintained. It is maintained in the title. So I simply need to write oEvent.getSource.getTitle. Why? Because getTitle is the standard setter getter method for object list item, right? Because title is a property, it will obviously have a getter method. So getTitle. So getSource will get me the reference of the object list item that was clicked, and then getTitle gets me the details of the title, and that I store in SID. So this is the first thing that we need, right? And now how do we pass the parameters? So we pass the parameters in this. If you remember nav2, if I go back to nav2, there are some optional parameters, right? O parameters. And how do we pass them? You can see over here. It is a key value pair. So you write the parameter name and the value. Right? This is what we're going to do. So what do we do? So the key is very important. So we always, just to make sure, just copy the key directly from the request. So and pass the details. So let me just change it to So now what I've done, I have passed my sales order ID to the route. Guys, any issues on this so far? Okay, so this is because whichever parameter, so this is like you could say standard for any documentation. So any SDK that you see, any API SDK you see, for any Java files, any JavaScript files, whenever they document any methods, and that method has some parameters that you need to pass. If the variable name does not have a question mark at end, that means that it is mandatory to pass that parameter. And if there is a question mark, this means that this particular parameter is optional. So if you go back to our code, when I did not pass this parameter, it still worked, right? Why? Because only S name is mandatory. Rest of the parameters are, you can see question mark after each parameter. So they are all optional, right? They are used to provide some additional functionality. So when I do want to pass them, I can pass them, but if I don't need to pass them, I don't need to pass them. So that is why to denote this is the standard notification for any documentation. So whenever you're documenting and this optional parameter, you pass you write a question mark after the parameter. So guys, let's see. When I click on it, I go to the next view. But if I check the URL, you can see that aside from the sales order that I had already coded, I have also been able to successfully pass the sales order. Okay. So if I go back, I selected this and I click on it, the same detail has been updated. Right? So this is what we have done using the passing of the parameters. Okay. So we have completed part of our requirement. Now I want to show the details in the sales order details. So how to capture it? So I have successfully passed all the details that I need to pass from this view, and now I want to capture it over here. So how to do that? So what I'll do, let me just clear off this. What we'll do, first of all, we'll go to the init function, on init function, and this time we'll copy the same code as the first. So first line of code is going to be the same. So okay guys, what we're going to do, we are going to capture it. So we have sent the details from our source view. Now in the target view, I want to capture it. So what I'm going to show you now is how to capture the detail, right? Okay, let's see how to do that. So sales order details and the sales order. So the first line is going to be always C. Why? Because using this I'm getting the reference of the router. So in the on init method, I get the reference of the router. Okay. Now what I need to do, I need to fetch the value that has been passed. So how do I do that? First of all, route, and this time I will get the route. So I have already navigated. So I'm right now fetching the route, right? So how do I fetch the route? I pass the same value. So this is the route name, right? Detail. So I pass that. Get route. And then I'll pass a special method here, attach pattern matched. What? Right. So the first part is correct. So O router, I'm fetching the router instance of the router in my application, right? And then I fetch the configuration maintained for route which is named detail, right? So I get the details of this part. So I get the details of this part, right? I've done this over here. But now if you see, this route does not only have a pattern, it also has some values, right? So basically it has some pattern, right? So what I'm doing, so this is a method which basically checks the values that I'm passing through my controller over here, and it compares it with the pattern. So one view might be called by multiple ways, right? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm saying that if the route name is detail and if the pattern that is being used by the navigation from my source control matches the pattern that is there in the manifest, okay, so this is what I'm meaning over here, then what I need to do, I need to attach this function and call this function, right? So what I'll do, I'll click on this and we'll now go to the on init because the view is getting initialized for the first time, right? Now let's go line by line. So what happens, I go to the router and I will get the details of the router. Now when I do this, right, what will happen, let's take it. So the event provider listens, right? And if I check the router result, so this is all the internal process that is being executed, and ultimately at the end of it, what is going to happen is that I have right now, so why this processing is happening, because I have attached one function to the router for one specific route, right? So what is going to happen at the end of it, okay, so it has come over here. So what I have done is I have attached, so you could see in the background, that is why I went actually into the that is why I went into the function call. So basically what happens is that when this is happening, okay, so immediately after this there is some internal processing that that takes place in the routing JavaScripts and the various other managed object metadata and component JS, which attach or which enforce the router to remember that whenever this route is triggered, this function needs to be called, right? So as you can see, I went back and so I went back and then I clicked on some other element, right? And you can see immediately, once again, this time the on init does not get called, right? Automatically, because the view is rendered, this function gets called because now the reference of this function is there in the router for this current session. So it automatically triggers this function. This is how we match nodes. This is how we match a route with one function. Okay. Now one more thing that you need to understand in this is the O event. So if I just take a look at O event, so see what the O event contains. So O event contains all these details. So right now I have not, so okay, so it is coming from the pattern matched, right? So the event is pattern matched and it has some details, but I still do not have the ID that I've passed, right? So how to fetch that ID? So again, once again, there are two methods. One is the function method where you can actually write a function, or you can check it from here. So this is the ID that I had given, the key ID, right? If you guys remember in the manifest, SID is the key. And where is that in the event? It is in the O event M parameters, arguments, key, and the value. So I can fetch it in two ways. O event dot M parameters dot arguments dot SI. That is the first way. Or I can simply write O event dot get parameter. So you can see that this is auto completing, and I can see the various methods, right? And in the get parameter, I will pass the argument name as this. Oh, sorry. I have to do something like this will give me the same thing. So this is calling using the route or the navigation pattern, and this is through the function. So get parameter is same as M parameters, and what I'm getting the parameter as arguments. So this is the object, and in the arguments I'm fetching the value for this key SID. This is the key. So in this way I can fetch the value of whatever I've passed in this function. So let's quickly do this. So what I'll do, I'll go to the sales order controller. Just keep it for now. What I'll do is, let me capture the sales order ID. Where sales order, copy directly from here. So I'll use the method again. And what I will do, we will pick the arguments. Right, and then what I will do, where O text, I have used text, right? Go here. So what I will do, where text is equal to this dot get by ID. Set text as sales order. So right now what happens is, when I click on it, it just writes basic text. Now if it is working fine, what will happen? It will write the ID. See what happens. So we call this step over here, right? And let's pass it. Now it gets stuck in the debugger over there. Now let's see what all values we get. So we get the value that we passed, right? The text gets changed. Let's look at it again. Sales order ID, right? And now it is 4. And then I'm fetching the view, and from the view I'm fetching the text, and in the text there is a setter method set text in which I have set the value. Right? So when I pass it off, it gets it. Right? So this is how I can consume the details that I have shared in my source through my target. Right? So I'll show it to you in more detail, but just understand, like basically we have routes, right? And we also have something called as fallback. What it means is that I will create a specific target. So that target will be something like the standard view, simple plain view, which has a basic text like I showed you before, right? And in this we will just have some text like we did not understand the request, or there was some issues with the navigation. Please try again, or if the issue continues, contact your administrator. Something like this, right? A generic error message, and that blank page will be added as a fallback. So what will happen? Anytime the navigation is not happening, the pattern does not match, the fallback page will